Tuesday evening. I'm here with Corinne, the Libertarian Party of Canada president, and I'm here with Jacques, the Libertarian Party of Canada party leader. And this is Libertarian Currents. We are live at X, at YouTube, at Facebook, maybe Rumble, if that connection has worked properly. But if you want to join the conversation, please do. We can chat and we can see your comments coming in if you're using X, Facebook, or YouTube. And let's get into it. Jacques, you called us to order and suggested that we should have a stream tonight. So over to you.
Yeah, well, I thought, if nothing else, the Liberals are good at providing us with entertainment. And I thought it would be fun to talk about the Gong Show that's going on in Ottawa at the moment. Well, I'm obviously speaking about Chrystia Freeland resigning from cabinet, but there's a few things I wanted to discuss because there's some good stuff that's being discussed. There are elements that I think is misplaced. And of course, one of the byproduct of her resignation is that the deficit itself has taken a second fiddle, right? Which should not be the case. It's a terrible state of affairs, and people now are concentrating on the wrong element.
The deficit is $61.9 billion. I'm old enough to remember, in fact,
deficit, David, deficit.
The deficit, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And in fact, my daughters are both old enough to remember that having a deficit of $4 billion was big news. Like when the country found itself having to buy a pipeline and it was going to cost us $4 or $5 billion, that was headlines. That was front page news.
Yep.
And now we're talking $60 billion of deficit every year. Last year was 40 billion. This year is 60 billion. Where did these numbers come from?
And I have to wonder, some of the things I saw from Trudeau last night when he was at his fundraiser, pretty much not acknowledging anything about the day other than it's been a tough day, and talking about how he wakes up every day thinking about what he can do for Canadians and how to better serve Canadians. And I just, the level of delusion, and I think this is what I've seen this from some of the pundits out there as well. I think all of us, we knew this was coming. This day was coming where finally people are saying the emperor has no clothes. We were saying it way back when he was first elected. I was saying it when he was first elected leader of the Liberal Party, which was even before 2015. So I don't know if it's just people are starting to feel this shattered. They're feeling like they've been taken. Like, I don't know what the overall pulse is, but it's most
the
of
mood
us are
seems
sitting
to
back.
have changed.
Yeah.
Yesterday, something in the mood changed. Maybe it was, I think the mood is changing in mainstream media as well to some degree. But gosh, if he wakes up every morning and asks himself how to improve the lives of Canadians, that's 9 years. That's like what, 3,280 or almost 3,300 days that he's asked himself that question, and he still doesn't know the answer, it seems. Also, I was amazed at that presentation last night at the Liberal fundraiser, how he can. Somebody commented online about how he can compartmentalize. Like, he had a horrible day by all standards, but then shows up with a smile and he gives his speech, and it's like he's got the act down pat, it seems. And it really does seem that he's acting, and he's got a movie playing in his head where he's the star and everything is fine, and he can compartmentalize that way. Like, that's psychopathic, I think.
Yeah. And I think these were his Laurier fundraiser people, right? So I mean, at some point they've got to be looking at themselves going, like, I've really been taken. I've been taken for a ride here. As much as I want to convince myself that, the Liberals are doing a good, that the Liberals have good intentions. Again, back to this, intentions versus actual results. A lot of these people are probably from, not too far from where I am here in Ottawa, Rockcliffe Park, my riding. Thousands and thousands of dollars that they're spending every year. Well, limit is 1725, but a couple $1,000s a year, and they have to feel duped. I hope they feel duped at this point.
Yeah, I think so. Many do feel duped. I have a clip here of a Liberal MP who feels duped. His name is Wayne Long. I'm going to play it. And if those of you watching and commenting, let me know that you can hear the audio, all right? I'm just going to play this as a video at X, and I hope that the audio comes through clearly. Here we go. This is Wayne Long commenting in the Parliament yesterday.
It's time for the Prime Minister to read the room, to listen to his colleagues, to listen to the electorate, to look at the polling that hasn't moved in a year. And I'm also hoping, because of Minister Freeland's bold move, that other cabinet colleagues now are going to step up and do them finally, to tell the Prime Minister, like, this isn't about trying to readjust a little bit going into an election. We need a major overhaul. It's time for the Prime Minister.
So that'll repeat.
Wayne better be careful, because with comments like this, he may not be there for long.
Yeah, he's pun intended.
Right,
for sure.
Hey, I want to address that was one of the things I wanted to comment on, and our friends at the Libertarian Party of Saskatchewan, said, good riddance. She's being celebrated by some, despite being maybe the worst finance minister ever. So first of all, I completely concur with this. I think she is the worst finance minister we've ever had. But I'm very disturbed by people now who want to make her out to be Saint Christia because she's left with, slamming the door behind her. I guess it goes to show that every single one of us has got a line in the sand. But I would argue that her line was, well, $40 billion deficit was A-okay, but boy, I draw the line at 61.9 or whatever it is. I mean, the fact is that she's been complicit from the beginning in the worst government we've ever had. She's been a cheerleader. I mean, everything to me smells, and I didn't come up with it, it's something I read, but it smells of her having done this to position herself to be in a good position to win the leadership once Trudeau exits. That the whole thing would be calculated wouldn't surprise me at all. And I find it somewhat ironic that she, one of the elements where she slammed Trudeau in her letter was that political gimmickry was not the way to go. I think she's engaging in that. People should not forget what she did during the Freedom Convoy, where she was sort of laughing and cackling when she could get her hands on people's bank accounts. I mean, I think she's a terrible, terrible person.
And later, we discovered that during the convoy protest, she was making notes and passing notes to other MPs to declare that these people were terrorists. We have to declare them as terrorists, she said. And that was in order to then freeze bank accounts and lead towards the Emergencies Act. And the whole thing was, I mean, she should be in handcuffs as far as I'm concerned.
Right. So I don't think people should start saying, "Oh, she stood up to this guy, so she's a great person." I think it's very self-serving. I don't think she's doing it for the average Canadian. I think she's doing it for herself.
And
now,
one of the more surprising people, well, and maybe not so surprising commentaries today was from the former president of the Conservative Party, Tasha Kiridan, or I forget her name exactly, but she published in the National Post praising Chrystia Freeland for doing the right thing. She stepped down and put her thumb in the air to Trudeau. Well, this Tasha was one of Aaron O'Toole's greatest supporters, by the way, or and sort of friendly with Jean Charest. Just how that person could consider herself a conservative is mind-boggling. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to comment on, because I must say it's been bugging me, and I think people know by now that I am no fan at all of Trudeau. I think he's the worst prime minister we've ever had. The sooner he goes, the better. I think it was clear from the beginning that it was a terrible choice. This is not hindsight on my part. Back in 2015, I called it out because I knew what he stood for. I know what he believes in. And all of these things have been proven over and over again not to work. Like, for example, the guy is a massive statist. He loves central planning. He thinks that you can arrange the pieces in an economy to make it work. That's never worked. So I knew this was all going to. So I'm prefacing this because there's one element that where people have been taking shots at the guy, which I think is misplaced. And this whole thing about, well, you say you're a feminist and yet you're turfing all these women. I don't think it's a question of sex at all. I think that it just so happens that in his cabinet, the people who have stood up to him happen to have been mostly women. It looks like Morneau maybe did it a little bit, but the other three who got kicked out, I don't think it's because he said, well, I can't stand women or whatever. I think what he can't stand is anyone standing up to him. And for what it's worth, again, maybe it's interesting that most of the people in his cabinet who dare say something or to stand back happen to be women. It would be nice if some of the guys would actually, grow a pair and do something. But yeah, so yeah.
There have been cases of a few male Liberal MPs that have stood up. One was during the Freedom Convoy, and he commented, I forget the man's name.
Joel.
Yes, Bancroft? Joel
Youngblood? No.
Yes.
He's in Quebec City.
Right. And so he commented about how we have to tone down the language and we shouldn't be demonizing these people. They're peaceful protesting. And he clearly didn't agree with Trudeau's rhetoric about the convoy.
Lightbound.
And I really respected him for doing that. But he was already in the shadows. Like, he didn't, Trudeau couldn't demote him any further. He was never part of the cabinet, as far as I'm aware, and he was a backbencher or whatever they called them. Also, Housefather has been outspoken.
Yeah. I've been impressed with him actually the last 6 months or so.
But again, he can't be demoted any further. He's never been in the limelight. He's never been in the. Was he ever part of the cabinet with Trudeau? I don't know, but Trudeau has certainly sidelined him long ago.
Now, I can tell you, though, that he was given smaller jobs, such as head of certain committees, because I appeared as an expert witness in Ottawa in front of one of the committees that he was chairing. I was not impressed.
Well, yeah, like he's been towing the line all the way, except from time to time he'll comment about.
Let me just say, I've been impressed that he's actually been standing up or saying that he's against Trudeau and what he's doing right now.
No, my comments very specifically as chair of that committee. I clearly logic was something that caused him great difficulty.
I have another clip here. I think one of the things I found interesting about the events yesterday was the daggers came out towards Jagmeet Singh. And of course, Jagmeet Singh is the most spineless of all MPs. There's a few clips here I'd like to share.
Did he ever actually move to his riding? I'm curious. He must have, I guess, because he said he was going to. I don't know if anybody knows where he's. He was in Ontario.
I'm not sure if he lives in his riding or ever moved. Andrew Lawton, he had a good take the other day. He talked about how one day he saw Jagmeet Singh ride a bicycle.
Ride his bicycle.
And it was amazing that anyone without a spine could do such a thing. Yeah. That was a good take. Thank you, Andrew Lawton. Here's a clip about this was a CBC clip. This comes to us a tweet from the Pleb reporter. He says the NDP says that they are ready to vote non-confidence at the end of February or early March. Guess what happens in February and early March? Jagmeet Singh qualifies for his pension on February 25th. This is an interesting exchange on CBC with a NDP MP. Again, I'm hopeful that the audio is working great. Actually, I should double check that. Yes, the audio, and here we go.
Justin Trudeau is still the Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party in February and March. Does all options on the table mean the NDP will vote non-confidence in the government in those 2 months on that timeline?
If we're talking the end of February and the beginning of March, and Mr. Trudeau has not stepped down, hasn't he did that call from his own caucus, from his own cabinet, from all the opposition parties, then yes. So of course that would mean if we're coming up to a straight up non-confidence motion the end of February, early March, that's one of the tools that we have. And okay. So there's no doubt about that. I mean, Jagmeet Singh was very, very clear. My concern really, David, isn't just late February, early March. It's right now. People need the supports. We need a government that actually is functional and is putting those supports into place. And we need all hands on deck in terms of the Trump tariffs, which threaten hundreds of thousands of jobs. So this idea that the Liberals can play out a drama over the course of the next few months, simply not on. And the NDP, and I think Jagmeet Singh was very clear about that.
Okay, well,
Jagmeet Singh is never clear about anything. It's just astonishing how two-faced the guy is. I mean, the Liberals are never good enough. They're corrupt. They have their CEO friends, and then, vote them out of office. Well, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah,
they would rather have this chaos than to have a conservative government. Think about that. I mean, what would be so bad about, conservatives have been the majority government many times in our past and have done a pretty good job. And what would be so bad about a conservative government? And this NDP and obviously Jagmeet Singh would rather have the current chaos.
Well, to me, it's more than chaos. I mean, it's as we've stated before, the worst government we've ever had. I mean, this country is not doing well on pretty much any metric that you care to mention. I mean, economically, we're well on our way to be a basket case. The debt, the deficit, the unfunded liabilities, law and order is out the door. Immigration is out of control. I mean, it's just one thing after. I mean, a judiciary that doesn't work. National defense is a disgrace. I mean, it doesn't matter what you mention, right? Yeah. I mean, we are way worse off than we used to be, and it can't go on like this.
In fact, the other day I was having a conversation, and I was challenging someone to think of one thing in this country that's better today than it was in 2015. Just one thing. Mm-hmm. I couldn't. Neither of us could come up with anything in that list.
Yeah, and maybe that's, for the average working person, definitely that's a no. There's nothing that's been better for us. For people who don't work or are relying on the government for their lifestyle, well, they're probably, even they are probably not as happy as they could be because they always want more, right? So it's, with Singh pushing the Liberals to the national pharmacare and the dental plan and things, dental plan for seniors over, what was it, 85, 80 when they started?
75, I think.
Was it 70? I didn't think it was that high. But even at that, you're really looking at a very small portion of the population to begin with, right? Like somebody went, it was actually, I saw it was Catherine McKenna's husband, Scott, I don't want to butcher, I don't know the last, I can't remember the name. He was really taking it to Trudeau in the last few years on Twitter. And one of his things that he had said was he'll always do the least amount possible to make it look like he's doing something but in reality, he doesn't care about it. He doesn't care about people. It's just something that people can latch onto and say, oh, look at this good that he's trying to do or that he's doing. And it's baffling to me that people aren't more aware or aren't seeing through all of this. And it's not until the media starts jumping on a politician where the rose-colored glasses come off and they finally go, oh, okay, yeah, maybe he isn't such a great guy. Like
So, like, to my
media
point,
has a lot to play in this. Media,
yeah, because like, and yesterday I was saying that the daggers sort of came out toward Jagmeet Singh. Here's an exchange from Parliament yesterday, where and by the way, this tweet is from Tom Marazzo, that he makes a comment. There's never been a more cowardly MP in Canadian history than Jagmeet Singh. He can't even pull the trigger to force an election, even though he's the only person. How is it possible that this one man is the only person in Canada that wants Trudeau in that office right now? And well, don't get me started on that. But he says this is what moral bankruptcy and personal weakness looks like. Also, Harrison Faulkner was chiming in. I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He's got to go. Here's the exchange that occurred. And, the journalists, to give them credit, I don't know if we'll see it in this clip, but they weren't giving him an easy time here.
Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are focused on themselves. They're fighting themselves instead of fighting for Canadians. For that reason, today I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go.
And then what followed was the media was challenging him. So does that mean you're going to vote non-confidence? So what do you mean he has to resign? And then Jagmeet Singh was talking about how all the options are on the table.
I want to. You don't have a follow-up clip to this, do you?
No, I could find one if you're interested in.
No. It's okay. It's just I
have one more clip though from Pierre Poilievre telling Jagmeet Singh to do the right thing and step down, or Jagmeet Singh to do the right thing and call a no confidence vote. But go ahead, and I'll queue up that other clip.
Okay, because I wanted to go back to Freeland again in terms of just how terrible she is. Now, even if we leave aside the usual, bluster from Donald Trump, I don't know if you saw that he reacted to her departure, saying "good riddance," but he was pointing out that during his first term, right, she was part of the negotiating team, when NAFTA was undone, and he labeled her toxic. Now, I don't have any hesitation at all to take him at face value, because I find her toxic every time she talks to me like I'm a 7-year-old. With that little voice and like, I know, and like, I got to explain things to you because you're not very bright and all that. I mean, that is, it's irritating to start with. It is toxic. And, we know that the Trudeau obsession with pronouns and trans stuff and whatever, and where they go and they insist that in order to do a free trade agreement, you need to incorporate some gender language and all that stuff. I mean,
carbon taxes.
You can see with Trump that would be, again, very, very toxic, because it's none. Like, can you imagine if a different country wanted to come in here and start to tell us how we need to write our laws or to use pronouns or what have you? I mean, we would tell them, rightly so, to get lost. But the mentality of the Trudeau government is that we are in the right. The rest of you if you don't agree with us, you are a bunch of Neanderthals, and we can act so in such a self-righteous way. Again, that is toxic. They don't seem to understand the concept of diplomacy. I mean, in diplomacy, there are certain things that you can't say. You can certainly believe them or think them, but you have to keep you have to keep quiet. Now, of course, there are certain cases where, to be blunt and tell it like it is appropriate. But for a trade agreement, I mean, if you start in with I mean, we're quite frank. I mean, everybody's knows like 25%. This is going to be terrible, whatever. Well, but whose doing is this? I mean, Trump is perfectly aware that every opportunity Trudeau has had, he's been belittling him. He's been accusing him of all kinds of different things. I mean, it is.
Yeah,
like
and in the most passive aggressive way.
Yeah, but once again, you hope that, you know, Trump is like, he could easily be very vindictive and take it out on those of us who had absolutely nothing to do with this, right? We can only hope that he can make the distinction between Trudeau and Canadians in general, although there are many Canadians who, you know, were cheering on Trudeau with this type of behavior. But my goodness, it's you know, they claim it's an important problem, and it is, but boy, I mean, what chance do we have? I mean, we're behind the 8 ball here. I mean, you've pissed the guy off to start with.
I'm pretty sure I saw a headline on CBC. It was before all this happened yesterday, where it was saying Trump is more popular in Canada than Trudeau is. So which kind of surprised me. So I don't know who they're polling, because it's not people around me, that's for sure.
But I think that was that was a Nanos poll or an Ipsos. Like, it was pretty serious polling.
Yeah, and it was on CBC site for, well, early part of the day yesterday, before everything else happened.
So here's the clip from Pierre Poilievre. This is brief, 47 seconds, and he's calling on Jagmeet Singh to do the right thing.
Mr. Trudeau is being held in office by one man, Jagmeet Singh. A fifth of Liberal MPs have written a letter for him to resign. His deputy prime minister has walked out on him. His housing minister has quit. That on top of numerous other female ministers who stormed out after his appalling mistreatment and abuse and dishonesty towards them. 80% of Canadians have lost confidence in this prime minister. So why is Jagmeet Singh making the entire country wait for him to get his pension? That is the question today.
It's ironic if this is indeed true, that, you know, he's not going to vote the Liberals out until he gets his pension, that he's the one who's going on all the time about corporate greed and I mean, you know, the hypocrisy is just.
Well, he's a social democrat, they would say, and I think history shows that social democrats will abandon democracy in favor of socialism every time. And he clearly, seems to be a lot of gray area in our parliamentary system that allows Jagmeet Singh to hold the entire country hostage to this minority government. Somehow there's a problem in our constitution that we can't undo this clown, this circus right now, and go to an election.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is the provinces don't. I mean, Canada is such a big country, and I'd love to see the provinces having more powers in this country, and they do to some extent. You know, my wish would be to see the federal, like the House of Commons, reduced down to about 100 seats, no more than that. I don't see any reason for federal to have 343 seats. Provincial, keep it about where it is. Municipal, keep it about where it is. But federally, there is absolutely no reason why we need so many seats in there.
So I take it you're not a fan of proportional representation, which by definition would double the amount of seats in Ottawa.
No, it would be more, you know, for the city of Ottawa, you don't need more, you don't need 5 or 6 ridings or whatever it is in the core of Ottawa. Just have 1 riding. Because federally, what do they need to do? And just look at regions and do it like, yeah, you can do it by population size. And maybe some regions will be huge, but ultimately it's, that's where I would, well, I'd like to see cuts at CRA too. That would be my first stop, but there's definitely, I'm not even convinced Poilievre is going to, he'll say he's going to axe the tax, but I don't know how much more he'll do beyond that. Like, we're really not going to see a lot of change with him.
Well, we can hope.
I'll tell you, this party in power would enact massive changes. I mean, one of my dreams is to emasculate the federal government. It is not an accident that one of the most prosperous, best countries in the world is a country where the vast majority of the people cannot tell you who the president is, and that's Switzerland. Nobody knows who the president of Switzerland is. Literally, nobody knows. Why? Because Switzerland is massively decentralized. Everything is at the canton level, or just about everything is at the canton level. I mean, the federal government in this country should look after national defense, possibly the judiciary, and diplomacy. That would be about it. The rest of the stuff should be downloaded to the provinces, along with tax points, so that the federal government can stop blackmailing provinces constantly. And then we could have the provinces compete with one another to see who comes up with the best model.
Yeah, and what? Ironically, Dominic LeBlanc is very much in favor of more interprovincial trade, interprovincial power, like provincial power, and that, who is now the new finance minister as of yesterday.
I was not aware of his views on this.
I'm glad that you brought it. Sorry, Corinne, I was looking for this example. Jacques, to your point about the federal government really should have limited scope, but very deep authority with regard to foreign affairs and securing the border. And we Ottawa is such a circus right now that we have provincial premiers securing their own borders. Scott Moe has come out, Daniel Smith has come out and said, we're hiring our own sheriffs, and we're buying helicopters and drones to monitor the Alberta Montana border and the Saskatchewan North Dakota border. It's insane that we have premiers that are having to do this because Justin Trudeau is so inept.
No, you're right. Absolutely.
No, again, that's what happens when your priorities are all wrong. I mean, like in terms of reforming things, you're right, David. First of all, another thing that I would do, try very hard, is to get a constitutional amendment to hardwire the size of the government. This idea that the government can continue to grow year after year, election after election, it has to stop. And if you had a hard measure, I'm not a fan of the GDP as an economic measure, but to make my point, if you said the federal government cannot be more than 5% of GDP, boy, they politicians would have to make some choices, set priorities, whereas many of the people in power, Trudeau, Freeland included, do not understand that we live in a world of scarcity. As far as they're concerned, there's unlimited amount of wealth, unlimited amount of time, unlimited amount of resources to do it all. That's not true. One of the most important things that every one of us has to do in life is to prioritize how to allocate scarce resource. They don't understand this. A hard cap would go some ways to compel them to do that. But when you believe that in a world where you have infinite resources, you can spend infinite amount of time on pronouns, at the expense of other things.
I've often equated our governments in the past, say, 20 years, especially here in Ontario, to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And they all think we're in this self-actualization top level of that hierarchy of needs, where most people are actually in the basic housing, clothing, food, safety, security. The government hasn't gotten that right. So why are you up here trying to do all that kind of pie in the sky sort of thing?
Well,
that,
there's a lot of talk about, the Laurentian elites that
yes.
control our government, and there's some truth to that. And
Mhm.
these are people that really haven't had to worry about paying a bill ever. They were born into wealthy families, and they're surrounded by wealth all the time. So yeah, you're right. I think that comparison to the Maslow's hierarchy is a sensible comparison. They think they're helping the country to move into a new state of consciousnness or something, but most people are just concerned about buying groceries.
Yes, exactly. When you look at, when you see those surveys that come out, what are the top 15, top 20 concerns for Canadians right now? Environmental is somewhere around 12 or 13. Like, it's not 1, 2, or 3. And it's always economy, like housing now. It's, again, we're thinking, well, the government shouldn't be doing most of this stuff anyway. They've caused a lot of these problems. So shrinking them would probably help alleviate to some extent. But yeah, now housing is flipped up to right near the top. I mean, 5 years ago, nobody was talking about lack of housing in Canada. Nobody.
Yeah, so liberal, affluent people were able to imagine and have fantasies about renting and living in condos downtown Toronto, and this would be their utopia. But as soon as housing prices, and I saw housing affordability a real issue even in 2019, and then certainly through 2020, and as the real estate prices started to get completely out of reach for most people, that I think even liberal voters start to realize that they too imagine one day that they're going to sell their condo downtown Toronto and move out to a nice acreage with a white picket fence and a big house in the countryside, but that dream started to slip away from people, and they started to dislike the idea that they'd be renting the rest of their lives in unaffordable real estate markets. Jacques, I wanted to come back to you about your comments about having a cap of some kind on the size of government relative to some metric, like maybe GDP or GDP per capita or some other metric. But what about the Libertarian Party stance on deficit in general? Like, it's my opinion that no politician, or let's say any politician that supports deficit spending, should be held personally accountable. Like, it should be either they should get immediately fired from the role, and a by-election should occur in their riding, or there should be some personal penalty for a politician supporting a deficit.
Okay, in general, I agree. I'm just going to bring in a little bit of nuance because these things are important. Let's assume, now, of course, in my world, roads would be privatized anyway, but in a maybe a minarchist view where the government continues to take care of roads, you can imagine a large undertaking for infrastructure, or it could be a bridge, for example, right, where the money has to be paid up front. Now, so if you were to say to a politician, look, boy, if you go into deficit spending, so this is where proper accounting would come in, right? Because you would actually, and I must admit, I'm not quite sure I understand exactly how the accounting works at the government, but what you would have—
I don't think they understand it either.
Well, okay, but it depends what the rules are. But see, technically what you should have is you build a bridge, say for $100 billion, well, let's say $50 billion, and no, that's too much. $3 billion. You build the bridge for $3 billion. You now have an assets for $3 billion, and you've incurred debt for $3 billion, right? So you're in a net position, and then you start depreciating this bridge because it's going to have to be replaced at some point, which would hit your accounts just like it does in the private sector. right?
Yeah.
And then there would be taxes to be paid in the future to pay for this depreciation. So, but leaving those aside, I totally agree with you. I mean, with this GST rebate and this $250 that now looks like it's been canceled, right? I was against it. And people called me out. They said, well, how can you as a libertarian be opposed to reduction in taxes? And my point was, I would be completely on side if it were matched with an equivalent decrease in spending. But I am not in favor of reduction in taxes if it's simply going to increase the deficit, because deficits are postponed taxes. Because think of it this way, you could eliminate all deficits by increasing taxes today, right? So if you're running deficits simply because you're saying, well, taxes are going to have to be higher in the future. And I don't think that is not appropriate. You cannot continue to download to future generation your spending of today. So in principle, I totally agree with you, except for this nuance of accounting where in some cases you do need to borrow now to do things that have a long time frame. But I mean, another one of the things that have been on about for years and years is this complete lack of accountability where politicians can engage in what I call one-sided bets, right? They can promise the moon. If it gets them elected, wonderful for them. And if this moon never happens, if the whole thing comes crashing down, they never pay any penalties. They don't go to jail. They don't pay fines. They don't do any of this. This is, to quote the great Thomas Sowell, it's difficult to imagine a more stupid or dangerous way of making decisions than by putting those decisions into the hands of those who pay no price for being wrong. That's what we do constantly. And it's hardly surprising that we're in the mess that we're in. So the whole thing has to be changed. The Constitution has to be changed to limit the size of the government. The Constitution has to be changed in order to put politicians who engage in these one-sided bets there, the man himself.
And that's the quote. I was able to find it quickly. It is hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way of making decisions than by putting those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. You were word for word.
Yeah,
from
well,
memory. Wow.
It's one of my favorite quotes, but it's absolutely spot on. But we have completely embraced this and it's not an accident. I mean, can you imagine a world where you can do the most amazing or engage in what you think are the most amazing thing, and if it comes crashing down, you pay no price? I mean, it's hardly surprising that so many people are drawn to politics. I mean, my goodness, I can't win. I can't lose, right? It's like going to the casino and all of your betting money is returned to you if you don't win.
It reminds me of this quote from Robert Conquest. The third one, the third one there. The simplest way to explain the behavior of any bureaucratic organization is to assume that it is controlled by a cabal of its enemies. I think that's related to the Thomas Sowell quote.
And along those lines, I don't know if you saw the announcement today. The Liberals have earmarked another $650 million to buy back of firearms. And last time I looked, they had already spent $42 million, and not a single firearm has been purchased. I mean, the whole thing. It as I've said before, when you no longer know whether you're dealing with a parody or reality, you know that you have a problem with the government. Because to me, it's an ongoing Monty Python series of skits.
I am absolutely. Oh, go ahead, Corinne.
No, it's just like, what can we get away with next? They just keep getting away with everything, right? And
well, it's Corinne. I think it's even worse than this. I think they know they're goners, and they may very well be engaging in the warfare equivalent of scorched earth policy, right?
Yeah.
Where they're going to dump as much or increase the deficit as much as they can to make it as difficult as possible for the next Libertarian government?
Oh, it won't be difficult for the next Libertarian government. It'll be difficult for the Conservatives. Libertarians, we'll do a great job, but the Conservatives they'll be lucky if their 4 years if they get past 4 years with the mess they're going to have to clean up.
So the other thing that happened yesterday that was really bizarre was the cascade effect that occurred when Freeland vacated her role in the cabinet, and then Champagne was supposed to be the next minister to become the finance minister, and he just said, no, I don't want the job. And then it went to another person, Randy Boissonneau was next in line. Like there was this sort of inheritance that occurred, and none of them got the job, except then Dominic LeBlanc was put in place because Mark Carney didn't want that. Like, think about Dominic LeBlanc having to realize when he wakes up this morning that he's not the first choice, not even the second fiddle. He's after Morneau, after Freeland, after these other people, he's like the 17th choice. And now he's the finance minister. Like, he didn't get this job because anyone wanted him to get the job. He got the job because he's literally the last person that would even accept the damned job. It's amazing.
Yeah, and he still has his other portfolios, I think, too.
I want to respond to Patrick. Yes, if you gave me an opportunity, you have no idea. I'm going to go through several chainsaws, or at least several chains. They'll have to be sharpened on a regular basis.
It would be amazing. Actually, I think that we're having, we may benefit after the next election. We may benefit from the Doge effort south of the border, that I think there's going to be some knock-on effects, or was that the right word? Knock-off effects, where like one of the things that Elon Musk has published already, that they have an X account where they're going to post all of the things that they're going to cut and the reasons for cutting it. So we're going to discover all kinds of crazy ways that the US government spends money, and that has already caused people in Canada to start hunting for ways that we waste money. You know, our government is wasting money on, I don't know, there was a crazy video this past week from one of the Conservative MPs, and he discovered, you know, millions of dollars going overseas to dictators, and millions of dollars going to build pipelines in China, and millions of dollars being spent on research studies on, you know, like some sort of gender-based analysis of frogs in some river system in Kenya. Or like, why is the Canadian taxpayer paying for any of this? I'm really excited to see whether or not the Doge in the US will have a knock-on effect in Canada.
I find it interesting when you see a list of all these different organizations, even just at the municipal level in a city, that you know, say it's an organization for refugees, and I don't know, there's maybe dozens of them. So why are there dozens of them? And I'm not, you know, I'm not going to go against charities or anything, but I'm looking at it from the more like non-government organization. There's NGOs out there that make a lot of decisions in our lives that they're not elected people, they're not elected bodies, and there's, you know, maybe dozens of them doing a lot of the same work. Remember, Harper got all sorts of flack for eliminating some women's organizations, and I'm sitting there going, well, why do we need so many of them? Like, why are they so niche? Are they so unique that you need to have that many? Cannot one organize, or 10 organizations versus 30 do the same work? And I think that's where this Doge is going to start making a lot of these connections. Are, you know, if we're doing this federally and statewide, well, then why do we need it, you know, at both, or things like that? They'll just see a lot of repetition, I think, and duplication in a lot of the work that's happening.
Matthew Lau, who's, as far as I can tell, the best young economics writer in the country. Just a few weeks ago, and I'm not I don't want to, because he's such a good writer, maybe he did spend a lot of time, but it sounded to me like a back of the envelope look at Ontario departments. And he wrote a column on this where he identified billions of dollars in savings, again, without breaking a sweat. Because he was looking at these departments and he said, well, what exactly do they do? And the answer was, well, basically nothing. Well, certainly nothing in terms of improving production in the country, right? So, no, I think everybody knows this is a massive amount of waste. There's, but there are also massive amount of vested interest who are going to fight tooth and nail to protect them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these are all. I mean, what he's saying, this Ontario. I'm sure this is one, sunshine list in Ontario. You look at that, and you could probably just go through that list and start questioning, what is this organization that this person's working? Universities obviously are always there, but you'll see all sorts of different organizations say, like, what do they do?
To go back to David's point about foreign aid, I mean that is such an easy one. The track record is awful to start with, and number two, from a moral point of view, it was never the government's job to give money to, like, if you as a citizen want to support Ukraine or Gaza or whatever it happens to be, then take your own money, but it's not for the government to start helping causes on your behalf, because first of all, you may not agree with it, right? Whatever the cause is, the government might be picking the side that you don't like. So this is one of those low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, someone posted just this past week or two that foreign aid is usually taking money from poor people of a wealthy country and giving it to the rich people of a poor country. Yeah, that's the pattern. That seems obvious to me that we should stop doing that and keep the money here and make benefit for Canadian citizens and Canadian taxpayers. Jacques, I know that before we went live, you were commenting about the time and that we had limited time.
Yeah, I do have to go very shortly.
I think we should wrap up. We went through some of the clips, and Karine, thanks for joining us this time. It was really great to see you. For those of you that are in the chat, thanks for chatting and connecting, and please share, like, and subscribe. That would be very helpful. We don't know when we're going to go live again, but hit that notification bell so that you're notified when we go live. Any last words before we close the night?
I just want to give people a heads up that, if I can find it quickly, maybe I won't, but...
Before we end the night, we should mention that there was a by-election in BC, and
absolutely.
And our good friend Alex was running in the by-election, and he had the least number of votes in terms of the party affiliation, but it was a good showing, and I know that he's proud of that and had strong support among his family and friends.
Yes,
so we are.
I think nothing says more about the state of politics in Canada than the voter turnout for yesterday's election in BC.
Yeah, really low.
16 or 17% of eligible voters. We think about all the things that were going on at the time. Canada Post is on strike, so people couldn't get mailed their voter cards. In that riding, they can only put signs on people's lawns, so you don't even see them around street corners and that. It's only if you see them on someone's lawn. And then yesterday was also the breaking news of this, breakdown of the Liberal Party. I think all these things converging, it's a microcosm of what is wrong with Canada today. Voter apathy, crown corporations that just aren't working, governments that just aren't working for us. It's time to, let's just clean sweep. We got to do something.
Okay, well, unfortunately, I cannot find it, but I'm going to be on a podcast on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern with one of the caucuses of the Libertarian Party, the U.S. Libertarian Party. Darn. Well, I'll put it on X when I find it.
Yep, and then we'll boost that. We'll repost it and make sure people are aware of that. Also, we might be heading into election if Jagmeet Singh grows a spine. We are the party is, of course, inviting people to submit to be a candidate in ridings across Canada. Karine is busy helping to deal with those applications. So please get your names in. Go to the website.
Please also fill out the entire survey, because if I'm seeing your survey where you've answered one or two questions, I'm not going any further, because I'm being brutally honest here. If you can't take the time to fill out a survey and have it submitted, what's your engagement when you actually become a candidate? So that's my line, and that's my bar. That's where it starts. And also being a member of the party. That's one of the.
It's $10 to be a member of the party, so it's not too much to ask to make that small commitment and then submit to become a candidate. I guess that's everything for the night. Thank you both.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone for commenting too.
Yeah. Bye.
Guys.